Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the Atlanta Realtors Rundown, the official podcast of the Atlanta REALTORS Association. I'm Andy Payne. I'm one of the hosts and chair of this committee. And today we are meeting with two representatives from our Governmental Affairs Committee. So we've got Caren Acheson, who is an agent here in Atlanta. She has been the chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee. She is the chair for 2025. And we've got Frankie Elliott. Frankie Elliott is Vice President of Governmental Affairs for not just the Atlanta REALTORS Association, but a few others. Welcome. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know these people, I'm going to ask them some questions, right? So Caren, what got you into real estate? How long have you been in real estate? Let's talk about that first.
29 years.
Wow.
I married a builder. So
Okay.
the next logical step was to sell real estate.
And then how long have you been a member of an association? Or like how long have you been a member of Atlanta REALTORS Association?
Atlanta Realtors since 2012.
Okay. So
And
12
in
13
Massachusetts
years.
before that,
Okay.
from 1995.
What made you join the association? What made you think this is something that you need to do? I'm just curious.
Well, when you sell real estate, you have to join an association to be part of. You can pick your association that you want to join, and I joined Atlanta Realtors because of the exposure that we get here in the town and the benefits that are offered by belonging to one.
Okay.
The MLS.
But did somebody tell you about it? Did you just Google it? Or how did you say,
No,
oh, I need to run down there
just
and
moved
sign
down
up?
here. No, just moved down here, and my real estate agent, I was going to go with one company, and then she said, "Oh no, you don't. Come talk to my company first." And you go in and talk to them, and whatever association they belong to,
Yeah, it's kind of just
then
the
you just
way
join
you're
it.
supposed
Right.
to do it. Yeah. Okay,
it's just
great,
a natural.
great. So what got you involved or interested in being in governmental affairs? How did that?
I don't want to spend too long on
well,
this. but-
normally, somebody tells you, hey, you need to do this, right? You're voluntold to do something here. That's how I've done the things that I've been involved in here. So I was told
Right.
to do it.
Right. I have always had a love or a passion for politics, I should say.
Okay.
Never wanted to actually be a politician, so I've always helped out in different things. And then, of course, working with a builder and working in real estate, you have to deal with town issues, you deal with state issues, contracts. I mean, there's a lot
Like
of things.
zoning and permitting and
All of that.
all that stuff.
All that stuff. So governmental affairs was one of the second committee I joined. First one was social committee
Okay.
here, and then the second one was governmental affairs. Once I got my feet wet after living here for a little while, and one thing led to another, and the more you learn, the more involved you get, and then you learn about RPAC, and that's another whole animal, and then the events, you start getting invited to events, and you learn more
Yeah.
through that. And so it's just a way to network, get to know people, be involved. And being a leader and a chairman actually helps you network with people. And
Sure.
you get to, it's servant leadership, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
you get to serve the people in your community and realtors and help you.
Right. So
You know,
for
so it's,
a lot of realtors, people that are members of the association, I only knew about RPAC, which is the fundraising side of
Right.
governmental affairs. The chili cook-off or the Young Producers Network is going to have this
Right.
fun event, and you're going to donate to charity, and the charity is the Realtor
Right.
Political Action Committee, which is part of governmental affairs. But Frankie, what's the difference between RPAC and governmental affairs?
They actually go very much hand in hand. I think
Okay.
an easy way to explain it is RPAC really helps fund the initiatives and efforts of the Governmental Affairs Committee.
Okay.
So RPAC, which is the Realtors Political Action Committee, has been around since the late 60s.
Wow.
And it's totally funded by membership, volunteer contributions by members. And I like to tell people, RPAC is what allows us to participate in the political process. And
Okay.
by that, I mean, it allows us to help candidates that are realtor-friendly or property rights-friendly candidates. We get involved in their campaigns. We donate to their campaigns, and hopefully, if they're elected, then they become friends of realtors at whatever level they ran in. So realtors really the financial arm that allows us to participate at that level.
So how did you get involved in governmental affairs? What's your story in a nutshell, right? How did you get this lofty thing you do?
I was in college and I actually wanted to be a high school history teacher, but a girlfriend of mine asked me if I wanted to go to an event. I was at school in Birmingham Southern, and she needed volunteers to go collect tickets at a fundraising event for Hal Heflin, Senator Hal Heflin at the time. And that's kind of how I got started in politics, believe it or not. It was through great fundraiser. They had great food and all that. But I started working and volunteering that way, and then I ended up getting my master's degree at Florida State in public policy, public administration.
Oh, okay.
And I got hired to do campaigns, and then one of the candidates I worked for was successfully elected to the Florida Senate, and I ended up working for him as a staff person, and then just generally got recruited from the Orlando Realtors to work for the association, and I've been with the Realtor organization since 1994.
So you've never been an agent?
No.
Ever wanted to be an agent?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Although my husband and I had been real estate investors in Florida, and it was a great profession. My husband really was much more involved in it than I was.
In that part of it, right?
Correct. That's correct.
So, again, if you're going to describe, I'm going to read the description really quick of the committee. Just again, we're trying to educate realtors that don't know what this part of the association does, and it's also important. This podcast goes out to consumers as well, and so they need to know what we as realtors contribute to help improve their lives, right? As far as being property owners specifically. But the committee shapes the formulation of local ordinances and policies through professional lobbying. Frankie is a professional lobbyist. Grassroots advocacy, which is all of us realtors sending emails, sending texts, if we know people, informing them and educating them on what we think is a good idea. And supporting the election, like you mentioned, of pro-realtor candidates for public office. Committee members also review legislation and recommend political action to protect the interests of realtors, our industry, and our clients, who are ultimately property owners in one way or another, right? So how does donating to RPAC, how does knowing about governmental affairs, how would that just help an agent's business? Why should they do it?
So I like to explain it. Caren and I have talked about this quite a bit. I like to think of it as your partner, business partner, right? I mean, obviously, realtors want to be out there helping their clients buy and sell real estate. Government can sometimes be very daunting to people. It can be intimidating, and they don't know. It can be very complex. They don't know who to go to, who to call, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really what we do on behalf of our members. So Caren mentioned that, we are out there helping with ordinances and that kind of thing. So a great example is a couple of years ago, the city of Roswell was looking at amending their sign ordinances. And they had some language in there which basically would have prohibited the use of for sale signs on private property.
Because they didn't want them on homes. Corners and thrown in the ditch and that kind of stuff.
Quite honestly, quite honestly, they just got swept under a category of signage. It was the fact that they were temporary in nature, if I remember correctly. And so it was just a matter of sitting down with city staff and city elected officials and saying, we don't think this is really what your intent was.
So it's kind of an unintended consequence that we would have not been able to advertise a house.
That's exactly right,
Gotcha.
if I remember correctly. So it's just really a matter of helping educate local officials. A lot of them, they're not in real estate, right? They have their own profession, so they don't necessarily understand how something will impact property owners or buyers or sellers. So that's what we're able to sit down and work with them and work hand in hand. It has to be a win-win, because generally they're looking at solving a problem, right? So when people ask, why should realtors get involved? I don't sell real estate like you asked, right? So I need guidance from realtors who are out there doing it when something comes up to say, hey, Frankie, look at this, et cetera, et cetera. So we need you to be involved so that I can be a better advocate for you.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So it's not just educating the officials. Sometimes it's educating you on what the issue, what this means, or
how it impacts.
How this is going to impact us. And then property owners as well.
Absolutely, right.
I mean, that's one of the number one tenets of being a realtor, is that we protect property rights and property owners.
Correct.
Because that's how the whole thing works. So, Caren, do we help national politicians become elected? Is that what the ARA does, or do we only focus on local?
We focus our efforts on local.
Local
Okay.
meaning like county, city?
Yes.
School
Okay.
boards.
Yes.
School
and
boards.
school board.
Okay. Okay.
So state focuses on state, governors,
Mm-hmm.
senators, things like that. National focuses obviously on national things.
So you're not you're not flying to Washington every weekend.
No. The National NAR, that's really NAR's purview.
Okay.
So they have an entire department that does nothing but deal with Congress.
So
and the
you're here
president.
helping us.
I do local government.
Okay.
Right.
She's local. I'm
Got
And
it.
GAR
right.
does state.
Okay.
But we go to Washington and we go to state, and I'm on the state committee as well. And so Frankie is too.
So
So-
talk about that really quick. Talk about going to Washington, or maybe on a local level, going to the
Days
Capitol,
on the Dome.
the days at the Dome. right?
We have lots of avenues for realtors to get involved, and before I go on to the state and national levels, I want to talk more about the local
Yeah.
and getting more people involved,
Okay.
and how we really help the realtors, because the more knowledgeable that we can tell them what we need to do, and Frankie and I were just talking about that in her office, and I said we need to do a better job of communicating with the towns and getting the realtors that live and work in the towns knowing what we can do and how we can help them by going after different ordinances. And I always use the phrase, if you hear something, say something. If you see something, say something. Let us know. We're here to help you. I mean, that's what we're here for. And it's it makes you more knowledgeable as a realtor if you know what's going on in the towns, right?
Sure.
To get involved. You don't have to be on our committee. You just have to let us know. So we're going to make
Like,
an
hey,
initiative.
I went to city council
Or I heard something,
I
yeah.
heard or I heard a city councilman at the local diner say X, and I don't know. That kind of struck me as weird. And how do we
Right.
change?
Or
this
they're
guy's-
talking about passing another ordinance, another one. I hate to keep bringing up Roswell, but we've been very involved with Roswell lately. But they wanted to, well, they did, have to put driveways in the back and garages in the back of communities
For townhomes.
for townhomes. And we're like, okay, that's more money. On our end, we fought against it and we advocated for not having that
So that's
because
going
it's
to
more
make the
expensive.
yeah, so it's going to increase
It's more expensive, correct.
house prices, which isn't good for fair housing and lots of other reasons.
Correct.
Yeah.
And builders. I mean, it costs more money,
Uh-huh.
to put a driveway in the back because now you have to have another access point and another roadway. So it's things like that. And there's all kinds of common things that we hear about. And every realtor will hear about things in their neighborhoods. They'll hear about, hey, I heard they're going to pass. Let us know.
Okay.
And we want to be friends with you. We want you involved.
Well, you had asked about how this works, the relationship works, right? And I think you would find even at the NAR level, they were going to tell you that all politics is local. And it really is. All politics is local. Even congressional members are going to be concerned about how something impacts their constituents. Because at the end of the day, the individuals in their district are the ones that are going to either reelect them to Congress or going to vote somebody new in, right?
Yeah.
So Karen's absolutely right. Each of the different levels within the realtor organization has their levels of responsibility. But it is also very much a support. So we would support whatever the state needs whatever the state needs help doing, correct? If they have a state senator or state rep that's in our area that they need to convince or help with, then they're going to reach out to local associations and say, hey, can you reach out to Senator so-and-so and let them know how this is going to impact them. Same thing happens at the national level. NAR will reach down to the states and even to local associations and say, hey, a perfect example of that was several years ago when they were looking at the huge tax reform bill that was passed. And Congress was looking at 1031s. And they really wanted Congress to understand that 1031s is a very viable tool, not just for huge corporations who own multiple properties, but even individuals that might own a commercial property when they have to buy or sell that. So they had reached out and said, hey, can you give us some scenarios on how a 1031 really helped an individual or a family,
sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Bill Adams with Adams Real Estate Company, who's a member of ACBR, had a perfect example to share where a school needed additional property to expand and a family needed to do an exchange.
Okay.
So he was able to make that work. And NAR used that example as one of the ways to talk to Congress about. So while we have our own areas of responsibility, it's a very great supportive way that all three levels work together. And Caren had mentioned RPAC. So the local associations are the ones that are responsible for raising that money, but we share it at all three levels.
Right.
So 35% will stay here locally. 35% will go to the state for their use, for state senators, statewide elected officials, et cetera. And then 30% gets sent to national, and that's what they use when they get involved in congressional races, Senate and House races at the national level.
And I've heard, and I love this, that we're not red,
We're purple.
we're not blue,
Yeah.
Purple Party.
right? It's not about an individual's party, or we're interested in politicians that advance the rights of realtors and the rights of property owners. So we're purple, red and blue mixed.
Correct.
Right?
I think you'd be really hard pressed at the national level to find an organization that's more bipartisan than the realtors.
Yeah.
I really do. They're very proud of their split. And generally, they're going to follow, obviously, the members of the national level that participate at the national level make those decisions. But if you go back and look at the candidates they've supported over the last several election cycles, it's been fairly split.
And I think that cooperation and bipartisanship is something that
Absolutely.
that is vital to making everything work. So one thing I thought of that we did as an association during COVID was somebody talked to Brian Kemp and said, we're essential people too. Realtors are essential people, because if somebody has to sell their house for some reason, not just because they want a bigger pool, they're moving. They got a new job somewhere else. A family member's passed away, something terrible's happened, and they need to sell their house. It's not that they want to sell it, they need to. And we need to help them when they need the help. And somebody convinced Brian Kemp that we were essential workers, right? Do you know the story behind that? Was
I
that
don't
you? Was that, do you know the
No.
story, or was it just,
It started on a national level.
Okay.
Honestly, that's where it started. And Brian Kemp has always had a realtor's back. He has real
he's a
estate
developer
back.
on its own, yeah.
Yes. So he's always related a lot to us. He speaks with us quite
Right.
often, actually. And so once that started, yes, essential personnel, the 1031 exchange, and that I count both of those kind of on a national level, even though you could determine that locally as well. And then we have, the local issues, the current things that we're working on, and things we haven't, like squatters.
Oh yeah, so let's talk about that. So
Yeah.
what
That was a past win.
can you share with me a couple of things, like in 2024 or either the last legislation cycle or whatever, some wins that we've had through our efforts, like some ways we
Ladybird deeds.
Now, okay, what is a ladybird?
Ladybird Johnson.
Probably should know what that is, but
Ladybird Johnson, it came from her, and
Okay.
it's when a deed doesn't have to go through probate. And a lot of other states have had it. It can pass right to your beneficiary. It does not go through probate.
so if the
and
will
get
says,
tied up.
"Hey, you get my house when I pass away," normally that could be a 3 to 6 month process, depending on how
Correct.
backed up the county is.
Correct. And Georgia just passed it last year.
Oh, really?
So
That's
that
interesting.
was, the state of
Yeah, I
Georgia
had a
just
deal one
did that
time
last year.
that ended up finally making it happen, but it was
Right.
something I wasn't aware of.
Yeah,
That time
it's
delay.
unusual,
So-
that we waited so long to do it. But
So a ladybird deed.
Ladybird deed,
All right,
and
so
people
that
don't
was-
know what that is. So that's a good win for us.
Okay,
you know?
what?
The
else?
squatters, without having
Yeah.
to go be a felony. It took so long to get them. You had to go through the court process because it was a felony.
To get
And-
somebody out of your house, you mean? Somebody who was
the
squatting,
squatting,
was squatting on your property.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because we had a big thing. We have a lot of issues here.
Mm-hmm.
We had them that people calling all the time, and what can we do about this? And these are the kind of things we want to be known for too, and we want to help.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to our local congresspeople. I'm also on an FPC team for one of our congressmen,
Mm-hmm.
and that helps a lot because we have single meetings with him and. We can tell them all of our issues, and this plays right into NAR too, because when we go to NAR, we still meet with him, and we meet with all of the people that we represent. So we do have, and RPAC, as Ennis put it yesterday very well in the meeting, that is our seat at the table. Meaning, if we give money to them and support them, and of course, we're only going to support our realtor champions, is what we call them, and we get a seat at the table. And our PAC allows us to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why they have to work hand in hand with us, because they have to know what we're doing, we have to know what they're doing,
Right.
and we have to support each other to educate all of the realtors here.
Yeah, the one time I was at the Dome on the actual crossover day,
Oh, okay.
I was told if you see anybody with a name badge that says representative or senator on it, right, please just remind them about Bill 269 or whatever the number was, right? Because it's so much activity. There's all that, like you said, they all have their own little concerns and their own pet projects. And it's like, if you could just remember to vote yes on 269, just anybody you see, just tell them vote yes on, let 269 cross over so we can have a shot at getting this into legislation, right?
Well, and that's another thing. Georgia Association actually puts out calls to action.
Yes.
So you will
Yeah, I
get
get
it on
those
your
emails.
phone.
Yeah.
So don't delete, don't block them. Do it. When they ask for that call to action, because that's your chance to reach your legislator directly.
Do they really get those texts and
Yes,
emails
they do.
and all that?
Absolutely.
They
It goes
do.
right to them.
They do. Okay.
Absolutely.
So Frankie, what are some things we're working on now? Maybe
So,
next couple of years this
yeah,
year.
I mean, there's a couple of things we're starting to see pop up in different jurisdictions. The city of Atlanta, for example, has been working for several years and is continuing to work to rewrite the tree protection ordinance.
Okay.
And for anybody who really has been in this area for a long time, Atlanta very much is known as the tree within the forest, the city within the forest, not the tree within the forest. And we're very proud of our tree canopies, right?
yeah.
And so the city has a goal of having the city be covered 50%
Okay.
of a tree canopy.
Do we
That's
know
a
what it is
goal
now?
that it's 46% right now.
Okay,
so we don't have a long way to go, and everybody loves trees, right? And like with everything, the devil is in the details. So we've been working with the city to try and make sure that what's required is first of all sustainable. We don't want for homeowners and even commercial developers to have to be out there spending money and planning things that aren't sustainable in this area, or that there's so much requested on a specific piece of property that they can't all survive. So sustainability is a really big issue. The second thing is that it's just so erroneous, I guess would be the word, that it can't be done, that developers just decide not to continue the project because between the cost of meeting these standards and paying impact fees and paying permit fees, et cetera, knocks them out of the market. We want to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. But it is a very complex ordinance. It's people are very, very passionate about this issue. So it's something we've been working on. But one of the issues that we're starting to see come up in relation to that is we've had a couple of members in committee talk about how either clients have not been able to get homeowner policies because of tree canopies.
True. Yes.
Or they haven't been able to get their insurance renewed because they have a certain percentage of the roof is covered by trees, right? And we all know that removing big trees is very expensive. And I've had to do it before, and if you ever watch them do it, they earn every penny that you pay them to
they're 80 feet in the air
exactly.
on a
So
spread.
we're that's the kind of thing, I think that's a really good example of why it's important for realtors to be involved, is because staff level, again, they're not realtors. They don't understand. If they haven't had an experience, they don't really understand what's all involved in it. So tree canopy sounds great and everybody loves trees, but sometimes it's not the best thing for property owners.
Well, I know every time the ice is threatened, wind is threatened. I mean, I'm looking at the trees in my yard.
Right.
Oh boy, right?
Right.
Or you're looking at a neighbor's tree. Yeah, and the insurance thing is becoming bigger and bigger. Roof age,
absolutely.
roof age, and then coverage, and they're using Google Earth
to do some of the inspections,
and drones and all these kinds of ways to make sure that the house isn't in danger, right? Which makes sense from the insurance company's perspective.
Sure.
Like you said, it's complex.
Right. And so one of the other issues we've been working with local governments on is short-term rentals. And you can talk to a room,
like Airbnbs?
Correct.
Okay.
And you can talk to a room full of realtors, and half of them love them and the other half hate them, right? So it depends on whether or not you live next door to one sometimes on your passion for them. But they're here, and they're not likely to go anywhere. So, again, we've been working with local governments to just make sure. I think the vast majority of what local governments need when it comes to items like that, they need a contact person that can solve a problem quickly. So a lot of
you mean like the homeowner or
the property
management
right?
company
So
or whatever.
Whoever's managing.
So I mean, And a lot of times they will react from horror stories. There's one bad actor that had a really big party on a certain street.
Like this weekend that's coming up.
Right. That's a good example, right?
Yeah.
And then they react to that. But a lot of times, if the local jurisdictions, if their police or sheriff's department are responsible for code enforcement, or if code enforcement is called, it's important to remember those are all judicial processes.
Okay.
Notice has to be given, time to respond has to be given. So to correct a problem with parking, you can't, that's not really a viable option to others in the neighborhood, right? So a lot of jurisdictions just want somebody they can contact. They want a point of contact to help solve a problem fairly immediately, right? Without having to go through. And a lot of times, my experience has always been that 9 out of 10 people will respond favorably to being asked to stop doing something. Like, can you get people not to park on our yard, et cetera, et cetera. So
Turn
those
the music down.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the other issues that we've really worked with over the last several years with local governments.
Is there something that I've become aware of more and more, and I've had it happen to some of the agents that work in my office, is the whole idea of somebody pretending to own a piece of land, and then all of a sudden you get a notice that your land has been sold out from under you because some fraud scam person was able to successfully trick the attorney into thinking that they owned it, right? So you look
They've
at Caren.
also done they've also done
That's
that
something Karen's
vacant
been
land
following,
fraud.
yeah.
Vacant
that was
land fraud,
Yes,
okay.
they've definitely addressed that. So we know.
How are we addressing that? Like,
They put, I don't know all the legal terms of it, but basically it's you can't okay. The reason it started was there was the piece of property down south that if it wasn't in a small town, they never would have known, because when they went to register it, the fraudsters went to register
they're like, you're talking about my Aunt Julie's house. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, whoa, what? No, they owned that property. But if they didn't have such a small town, I mean, think of Fulton County. Think of how fast these things can go. And, stopping fraud is like getting downtown, getting right there and getting the IDs, preventing the fraud at the closing and not letting it happen. And we've talked about mail-aways. We've talked about, the fraud that comes in with that, which we had a lot of mail-aways, and we're still protecting it, but with the proper protections on it.
Who are we trying to get to do something on a vacant land issue?
I think
what county governments or city
Karen's
governments?
talking about is I think the legislation that's been passed in the past has been filed in the past would require notification. So if something was filed on your property,
Okay.
a title change or something like that, the current property owner would be notified
Yeah.
by the jurisdiction.
Okay.
So
But that didn't pass for some reason.
as far as this has been 2 or 3 years they've been working on this, and so it hasn't passed yet.
Okay.
But if I remember correctly, that was one of the provisions they were looking at doing, so that there would be notice given to the property owner. But quite honestly, I have not looked at the bill this year on what's been filed, but I think it's probably safe to say that Georgia Realtors knows this is an issue, and they've been advocating to find a solution to it.
At the state level.
Correct. Yeah, at the correct. That's right, state level.
Yeah. How many counties do you touch, would you say?
About 16.
16 counties.
Yeah,
okay.
16.
So this is not just Fulton County.
No.
Yeah. There's lots of stuff going on.
Right. So we just, on the commercial side, we're still dealing with up in Forsyth County on commercial transportation impact fees.
Okay.
So it could potentially, we had a great win. I think it's not passed yet, but that could have really potentially stopped commercial development in Forsyth County.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's still in the process. So hopefully we'll be able to wrap that up in the next couple of weeks.
So how can a realtor or member of the association get involved? Two things I'm thinking of. How can they let you know? Do they come by and see you in person? Probably not, right?
They can always email. And Karen's email contact information is on the website also.
Okay.
Come join our committee.
They can email. They can even Zoom in on our meeting if they want. They can stop in. You don't have to be a member of our
So Governmental
chair.
Affairs is not a closed committee. This is open to anybody who wants to
Anybody that
participate.
wants to, yes.
Okay,
And we will
great.
let you in. Just, if you want to Zoom in, let us know. If you want to come in. Sometimes we want people to come talk to us, other realtors in areas. Tell us, hey, what's going on in your area? You want to come talk to us about that?
Mm-hmm.
And that allows us as a committee, too, to know what's going on and to help them. Like, how can we help them?
Okay.
And we don't know about the problems unless we hear about it from them. By the time it gets to us, or to state or trickles down, it's usually a big problem. Something that came up interesting at the last Government Affairs, which I spoke with Jeff Ledford about this after the meeting, was the squatters thing for using the squatters rule for innkeepers. And they're calling, and this could apply to short-term rentals.
Somebody won't leave.
Right. If you have an inn, typically the person lives there, right? The host lives there too. And what if they won't leave? How do you get them out?
Like a bed and breakfast.
Exactly. Exactly. And short-term rentals could fall into the same category.
Sure. Yeah.
So why not give them the same rights as not to have to make it a felony and use a officer of the peace or peace officer, what they call him, and also a sheriff
And
or
it
somebody
takes
like
3
that.
weeks, or the courts are shut down because
Exactly.
of a state of emergency, or
Exactly.
who knows, right? Okay, that's a great
So it's
idea.
all things that you don't really think about. I mean, I never thought about a squatter being on a property that's necessarily not vacant, but maybe overstaying their stay. And like, how do you get them out? So
That whole idea of input from other people is one reason why we have such a great association.
yes,
I mean, 14,000 people independently can come up with a whole lot of things that maybe the other 13,900 haven't thought about, right?
Right,
So
right.
that involvement is good. So if somebody wanted to join your committee, or somebody wanted to really get involved, what's the step? What do you? What
they
would
would
you
go
recommend?
online and register for the committee.
And that's a yearly thing.
But you can join anytime. I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
we welcome anybody. I mean, we want to hear from you people, I mean, really, because the public and, the realtors, I mean,
We are the public.
yes. I mean, we own homes too, but it's governmental and community affairs. So
Okay.
it's
Is that
it's
the official title?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
But it does involve all of our communities. And of course, our realtors, I mean, that's where we are. That's what we do. And
Yeah.
we're in there. It's like, see something, say something,
And then how could people help you? Or how do you reach out if you need something?
Well, that's really a great question, because I think sometimes members feel like communication with the association is a one-way street. And like with what Caren was saying, there are individuals that have been realtors 10, 15, 20 years in this area, right? They already have good relationships with local elected officials or staff at local levels. We would love for them to reach out and just let us know. Just say, hey, even, and a lot of we may even have a lot of members that are elected officials themselves that we just don't know about, right?
Yeah.
We would love to know that. We would love to be a help and support, and we'd love to use you as a resource if you're already involved in your local community, or even if you're not and you just want to be, we can help you do that as well.
Okay.
One of the things that Caren had talked about was about being in the community. And I'll tell you, about 3 years ago, we did a survey, and I venture to say it hasn't changed much. People have a very positive opinion of realtors. And one of the things I think that they realize is realtors to them are neighborhood specialists.
Yeah.
They look at realtors as people who know what's going on in their area. They talk to their realtor about, where should I go to church, or where the church is located? Can you direct me here? For that kind of thing. We want to really help realtors continue to be that resource, to be good neighbors, and to be the neighborhood specialists. And I think sometimes if they know or are aware of what's going on in their community, particularly at the level of government, that has a huge impact. We talk a lot about national, we talk a lot about the Georgia Association legislature, but local government has a far greater impact on your day-to-day life than those other two. So it's important for realtors to know what's going on right in their own community. And I think it's also important for the general public to understand that realtors are neighbors too.
Yeah.
We don't just buy and sell, we live here. This is our area. This is our home as well. So we have as much of a vested interest in making sure that we have a healthy community, that our schools are good, that transportation is good, as much as the clients that we help buy and sell property.
I think that's a great note to end this podcast on. Thank you guys for both being here.
Thank
You're
you.
Really
welcome.
appreciate it. If you're interested in governmental affairs, come sit down, talk, ask, email, text, attend committee meetings, lots of different ways to get in.
I think both your contact information is on the website also.
Yeah,
so-
and we'll put this in the show notes too.
Okay.
And then if you have enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe this podcast. We're trying to get information and content like this out to people. You got plenty of time in the car as a realtor in Atlanta, so why not listen for 30 minutes and get educated about something that you may have not known about. So thank you guys, and
Okay.
thank you
Thank
for
you,
listening
Andy.
to
Thank you
the
for
Atlanta
having us.
Realtors Rundown. We will catch you on the next one.
Okay, thank you.